Okay, we're going to cover the properties of different quadrilaterals in this video. We're going to talk about the sides, angles, and diagonals of each one, and then we'll go through with pictures to show you how that looks. So we're going to start off with parallelograms, okay, and parallelograms encompass rectangles, rhombuses, and also squares, okay. So some of the things that are true for parallelograms apply to all four of these shapes here. So sides, the opposite sides are parallel and the opposite sides are congruent. So parallel, you can see in the top picture here, the top and the bottom, those are your opposite sides. They run right next to each other, and that's indicated by the arrows. And then the left side is parallel to the right side, and that's indicated by this other pair of arrows. Now congruent, again, the top side and the bottom side, those will be congruent to each other because they're opposite. And the left and the right, they're opposite, so they will be congruent. So you can see BC is equal to AD and BA is equal to CD. Okay, next thing, angles. Opposite angles are congruent and consecutive angles are supplementary. So again, opposite angles are these ones that are across from each other. Okay, so the blue from the blue, those are equal, and this reddish one across from the reddish one, those are equal to each other. Now the second part of that is that consecutive angles are supplementary. So consecutive just means right next to each other. So like this blue is consecutive with this reddish one, and this blue one is consecutive with that reddish one there. And supplementary means that these two will add up to 180. So basically blue plus red equals 180. Okay, next thing is about the diagonals. Your diagonals bisect each other. That means they cut each other in half. So your diagonal is a line that goes from corner to corner, like from one corner to its opposite over there. Okay, and you can see here the two pieces, they're marked equal. Okay, so BD is cut in half and AC is cut in half. So that's what they mean by bisected. Okay, let's move on to rectangles. So a rectangle is very similar to a parallelogram. It just has one extra thing on there. So again, our opposite sides are parallel and our opposite sides are congruent. So again, you can see the parallel sides, top and bottom, left and right. And then also, if you look here at your sides, the top is congruent to the bottom, left is congruent to the right. Okay, now angles. This is where it starts to get a little bit different. For a rectangle, it has 4 right angles in the corners. And again, your opposite angles are going to be congruent, and the consecutive ones will be supplementary. So in a rectangle, all 4 of the corners are all 90 degrees. All right, now diagonals. The diagonals bisect each other, just like in a parallelogram, but this time they're also congruent. That means that they are equal. So if we look down at the second picture here, AC is going to be equal to BD. And you can see they're being bisected, so they're being cut into equal pieces. Okay, but since they're congruent, that means all 4 of these little pieces there, they're all equal. Okay, next one is a rhombus, or some of y'all like to call it like a diamond. A rhombus is a parallelogram, but it has 4 congruent sides. So that means all 4 sides are equal. And again, our opposite sides are still parallel. So if we go down here and we look, we can see each of these 4 sides, it all has the same mark on it. So they're all the same length. And then the top is parallel to the bottom, left is parallel to the right. Next thing about the angles, your opposite angles are congruent and your consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay, again, these ones that are across from each other, those are congruent. These ones are congruent, okay, the other 2 there. And then if you add 2 that are next to each other, they should add up to 180. Now diagonals, okay, this is what also separates the rhombus apart. They bisect each other still, so they're cutting each other in half, and then they meet at right angles, okay? So we can see here, this AC is being cut into 2 equal pieces, BD is being cut into 2 equal pieces. And then they're meeting at right angles, which means they are perpendicular. That's the key word, perpendicular. Right here, okay, where these lines cross, all 4 of these intersections, like all 4 of those angles, those are all 90 degrees. And then the last thing that they do is that they bisect the angles on the corner there. So this angle here at B, like that whole corner, this line is cutting in half. And that's the same thing with each of the other corners. So that is a rhombus. Okay, now a square. A square is kind of like a rhombus and a rectangle combined. It's got properties of both. So it's got 4 congruent sides and opposite sides parallel. So again, look, top and bottom are parallel, left and right are parallel, but again, all 4 of the sides are equal. Okay, now with angles, it's got 4 right angles, just like a rectangle. And again, your opposite angles are congruent and consecutive angles are supplementary. So all 4 of these corners in a square are all 90. Now the diagonals, they bisect each other, just like all of our other parallelograms. So you can see they're each being cut into 2 equal pieces. They are perpendicular, just like the rhombus. So where they cross here, all 4 of those corners, they're all 90. And then they are congruent, just like a rectangle. So AC is equal to BD. And so that's why they're each getting the same marking on each half of both diagonals, because if you take 2 lines that are equal and cut them in half, you get 4 equal pieces. And again, the last thing, just like a rhombus, they are bisecting these corners. And for a square, that's special because the corner is 90. So if you do 90 divided by 2, each half is going to be 45. So that's a square. Okay, now trapezoids. All right, with trapezoids, we're going to focus a lot on isosceles trapezoids because they're the ones that are the most specific, if you will. So for all trapezoids, though, you have 1 pair of parallel sides. That's like the main thing, okay? 1 pair of parallel sides. And then isosceles triangles, they have 2 congruent sides, and those are the sloping ones. So if we look at our picture, we can see the top side is parallel to the bottom side because of those arrows. And then this is an isosceles trapezoid, so you can see here, BA is congruent to CD. So those are the 2 sides that would be the same on an isosceles trapezoid. Okay, next thing is about their angles. Okay, the consecutive angles are going to be supplementary. Okay, so angle B plus angle A, those would add up to 180. And then for isosceles trapezoids, the opposite angles are also going to be supplementary. And then also in isosceles trapezoids, you have 2 pairs of congruent angles. So if you look in our picture here, we only have 2 colors on our angles. B and C, those are a pair of angles and they're congruent to each other. And A and D, those are a pair of congruent angles. And like we said, the opposite angles on a isosceles trapezoid are going to be supplementary. Okay, they're going to be supplementary, I'm sorry, because, you know, like we can see here, purple plus red is equal to 180. I'll have a purple up here, a red over across from it, so those should add up to 180. And then the last little bit for isosceles trapezoids, their diagonals are congruent to each other. So BD is equal to AC. But again, with trapezoids, the main thing is that they have 1 pair of parallel sides. That's the top and the bottom. All right, last shape, a kite. Okay, they don't have any parallel sides. They only have 2 pairs of congruent sides. So if we look over here, none of these sides are running parallel to each other, but you can see these top 2 sides are equal to each other, and these bottom 2 sides are equal to each other. So that's how you know you have a kite. Okay, same thing. Here are angles. 2 of our angles are bisected. So in our picture, angle A would be cut in half and angle C would be cut in half by this line going through the middle. And then 2 angles are congruent. The angles that are going to be congruent would be angle D, the whole corner there, and angle B, that whole corner. And then the last thing that you need to know about kites, and I would say this is probably the most important, is that they're diagonals, so these lines crossing through the middle, they are perpendicular, so they make right angles. So that's all there is to it for properties of quadrilaterals. So as you're taking your quizzes, I would have this displayed or printed out so you can have a little cheat sheet to help you out.